Okay, I was just going to say what Mrs. Heller said, that you might want to take a pen and paper. There might be something that you might want to write down. You might want to remember. You might want to say over at the Seder. Um, the novelty of what we're going to do today is that it's not going to be bits and pieces. Very often, when you talk about the Seder, you have classes on the Seder, there are bits and pieces. As a matter of fact, I remember a book I saw, a beautiful pamphlet I saw about 30 or 40 years ago called, and excuse my Yiddish, I'm not very good at Yiddish, but it was Vertlach and Shtiklach, which means, I think it means words, which means nice small words of Torah, and Shtiklach means little pieces. That's not what we're going to do tonight. What we've endeavored to do for many, many years is to develop a cohesive, an integrated approach to the Seder. In other words, where the whole thing fits together from beginning to end, and there's one theme. I believe that this is something that can be done, and it's very important to do to appreciate what the Seder really is. So let's begin at the beginning. What is Pesach about? Pesach is about Cherus. Pesach is about freedom. It is called in our prayers Zaman Cherusenu, the time of our freedom. And immediately we have to ask ourselves the question, freedom from what?
Mm.
We have been celebrating this for thousands of years. And for a good portion of those thousands of years, we were not free. We were enslaved or the like, time and time again. And yet Jews, under the most harrowing conditions, celebrated Pesach, celebrated the Pesach Seder. And when they sat down and celebrated the Pesach Seder, sometimes there was more tears than there was joy, but yet they celebrated. So we need to understand, what on earth were they doing? Our bubbies and our Zaydis, all the way back 131 generations to the people who came out of Mitzrayim, and it's only about 131 generations, believe it or not. It's pretty amazing. From me to my father to his mother, 131 people. It's not a lot. The story was passed down as we so carefully give it over every single year. But they celebrated and they knew something. So the first question we have to ask is, what do we celebrate? What did they celebrate? There are a number of ways we could do this. And you actually find this fundamental idea, you find it in the Haggadah in certain places. But let's do it this way. This is my favorite way. The central observance of Pesach is the Paschal sacrifice, correct? Yes, there's matzah, and yes, there's maror. But what does the Torah say about that matzah and that maror? It says, Al matzos umarorim yochluhu. The korban Pesach is to be garnished with matzah and maror. It's to be eaten together with matzah and maror. The central observance, the central feature, the central feature is Pesach. That's the name, right? Korban Pesach, the Paschal sacrifice. Who can partake of the Paschal sacrifice? Everyone in the family, right? It is a family celebration. It was done by Chabura. You had to register. Who could register? So the Torah makes a very clear statement. And this very clear statement gets us right into the understanding of what the celebration is. Torah says that a ger, a convert, can take part and must take part in the Paschal sacrifice. Now you understand, that's strange, isn't it? You have a ger whose father was an Irishman.
Mm.
His father was an Irishman, you understand. Then his mother, oh, she was from Norway. No relationship to Judaism at all. And yet they sit at the Seder and they partake of the Paschal sacrifice. Their parents, grandparents did not come out of Egypt. And they have a seat at the table like anyone else. However, says the same Torah in the same section called Ben Nechar, if you have someone who is a mishumad, someone who has given up the religion,
Ah.
they say, I don't believe in this stuff. They have no seat at the table.
Mm.
But they're your brother, they're your sister, they're your father, they're your mother. No. Their parents, grandparents, great grandparents came out of Egypt. There's no seat for them at the table. They're not allowed to eat it. You're not allowed to give it to them. This, says Reb Zalman Sorotzkin, points us to the fact the celebration is not a celebration of physical redemption. For if it was, the convert would have no seat at the table. And if it was, then the person who is the Meshumad who gives up the religion would have a seat at the table because his grandparents came out of Mitzrayim. That's not the essential celebration. The essential celebration is a spiritual redemption. When the Jewish people came out of Mitzrayim, when we, you and me, when we came out of Mitzrayim, something happened to us. Something happened to the collective Jewish soul. We changed. We achieved freedom. And that's what we celebrate. So therefore, you can't compare the exodus from Egypt to any other emancipation. Of course, the Jewish spokesmen always do, right, to the media, but no, it's a different thing. If you want to say, you can say, and you might want to say the following at your Seder. You could say that the physical liberation is a postscript. It's a postscript, not the main body of the letter. Let me show it to you. This was unplanned. I wasn't going to say this tonight, but I love it. You know, towards the end of the Magid step in the Seder, the step where we talk about the Exodus, Magid, right before we start eating, right? We say the following expression, Rebbe Gamliel. Rebbe Gamliel said, Kol shlo amar shlosha dvarim elu Pesach. Anyone who has not said the following three things on Pesach has not fulfilled his or her obligation. What do you have to say? Pesach, matzah, moror. And then there's a paragraph which explains those three mitzvos. Paschal sacrifice, eating of the matzah, the eating of the moror. And then we go ahead and explain. So say many of the Mefarshim, that's out of order. Why did Rebbe Gamliel do it out of order? First, he talks about the Paschal sacrifice. Then he talks about the matzah. Then he talks about the moror. Shouldn't the moror come first? Moror bespeaks, connotes bitterness, slavery. The slavery came before the Pesach
Mm.
and before the matzah. So it should be moror matzah Pesach. So one of the greatest of the commentaries, a commentary, there are thousands, literally, of commentaries written on the Haggadah. I think one of the top ones, if I may say so, be so bold, is written by Rabbi Yaakov Leerburbaum. He's also known as Rabbi Yaakov Melisa. He wrote a commentary called the Maisa Nisim, and it is a gem, his commentary. Rabbi Yaakov Leerburbaum, he lived in the late 1700s, I believe. So he says, and this is a theme you find throughout his commentary, and this is a theme which we're using extensively tonight. He says, if the celebration would be a physical celebration, a celebration from freedom from the physical, then Morah would be first, because that's what you want to say. We were slaves and now we're free. But that's not the essential celebration. The essential celebration is the spiritual liberation, which we are going to see is embodied in the Pesach and in the matzah. The maror, which has to do with physical subjugation, and therefore it has to do with physical emancipation. It's a postscript. It's PS. He actually says that. He doesn't say PS, but there's no such thing as a postscript hundreds of years ago. But that's what he says. It's an afterthought. It's another thing. It's a throw-in. Yeah, God, thank you for that too. But that's not the essential thing. What is this freedom of which we speak? What is freedom? What is spiritual freedom? What is the spiritual freedom which we never lost? Right? We're celebrating something which we never lost. We're celebrating something which happened to us that deep down we will always have, no matter what we suffer externally, no matter what we suffer internally, no matter what compulsions we have or proclivities we have, we still, deep down, a Jew has freedom. What is it? So listen to the definition given by the great Rav Kook. I'll read it to you in the English. The difference between the slave and the free man is not merely one of social position. We can find an enlightened slave whose spirit is free. And on the other hand, the free man with the mentality of a slave. Intrinsic freedom, here we go, is that exalted spirit by which man, as well as the nation on the whole, is inspired to remain faithful to his inner essence. Definition of freedom: a spirit, exalted spirit by which man is inspired to remain faithful to his inner essence, to the spiritual attribute of the divine image within him. It is that attitude which enables him to feel that his life has purpose and his life has value, no matter what predicament he finds himself in. But a person with a slave mentality lives life and harbors emotions rooted not in his essential spiritual nature, but that which is attractive and good in the eyes of another, who thus rules over him, either physically or by moral suasion. There's an outside force that controls the slave. That might be the Kaiser, right? It might be, as we're going to learn, it might be social pressure, or it might be one's own evil inclination, which we view as an outside force. Who is the one who is free? The person who can remain true to his inner essence. Definition of freedom. Now, for those that are writing, I think you could stop there, but I want to continue reading Rav Kook. Okay? Don't feel you have to get the rest down, but if you get it down here. We vanquished in exile, were oppressed by many hundreds of years by cruel tyrants, cruel masters. But our inner supernal souls imbued with the spirit of freedom, the spirit of internal self-knowledge. As the pasuk says, the verse says, Exodus 32:16, engraved upon the luchos, engraved upon the tablets. And our sages say, don't read it engraved, charus, but take the same letters and read it cherus, freedom. Were it not for this wonderful gift bestowed upon us when we went forth to everlasting freedom from Pharaoh, the exile would have transformed the spirit within us into a spirit of a slave. Listen to this. But on the festival of our freedom, we demonstrate open-heartedly that we truly feel ourselves to be free men in our essence, and that our exalted yearning for good and the sublime reflects our essential nature, which intuitively recognizes what is good. So, in a nutshell, freedom is the ability to remain faithful to the dictates of one's soul, the dictates of what a person truly, truly deep down knows to be good. So again, you can have a person that's physically free, but is terribly enslaved, obsessions, enslaved by society. Every time they come out with a new iPhone, he's got to go grab a new iPhone because he has to be he has to have the newest gadget on the block. He's got to get a 2027 car already because my next door neighbor, that person's not free. And you can have the person who's in the gulag. You can have the person who's on these shores, who's dirt poor, doesn't have a cent to his name, can't do anything except he could be a free person. To be true to who he is. Freedom. So that's the goal on this night. The goal is to tap into that freedom. What stops us from achieving that freedom? So, it's a great Gemara, which those regular participants in this class are very well aware of because we quote it often. It's a favorite. There's a Gemara tractate, Talmud tractate Brachas, page 17a, which talks about the specific prayers of various men of the Talmud. One of them is a certain Rebbe Alexandroi, and it says his prayer. Now, many of those prayers that are found on that passage in the Talmud, on that page in the Talmud, have actually been incorporated into our davening. Okay? This one not, but this one is an important one to know. The Gemara says like this, Rav Alexandroi, Basar de Matzle Amar Hachi. Rabbi Alexandroi, after he davened, after he prayed, this is what he said. Rabbona Shalom, the master of the universe, Ritzonenu lasos ritzonecha. It's our will to do your will. God, you know that deep down we really want to do what you want from us. So mima akev, so what's stopping me? So he says there are two things that are stopping us. Number one, get a load of this. I love it. Sa'ar shebe'isa. The first one is the leaven in the dough. The leaven in the dough. How peculiar, right? What's the leaven in the dough? So Rashi, you have to go to Rashi on the Gemara. He's always going to explain things for us. He says, Ze yetzer harasha banu. That's the evil inclination. So what are we saying? God, you know deep down, I want to do what you want me to do, but that nasty inclination, it's throwing me off my game. Right? And that's what he basically saying was, help me, God, help me. So that's number one. And how is it depicted, the Yetzer Hara? Sa'ar shebe'isa, the leaven in the dough. You know where this is going already. You're hearing it. It's the leaven in the dough is the bad guy. Leaven in the dough is not allowing me to be free. But then there's a second thing. The second thing is Shibud Malchios, subjugation to the kingdom. Malchios, Melech, subjugation to the kingdom. And then I'm going to get back to that in a minute. And then he completed his prayer, this Rav Alexandroi did, by saying, Yehi Ratzon, let it be your will to save me from their hands so that I return to your will with a complete heart. In other words, we know we always want to enlist God to help us in our fight in life. Whether that fight is internal, I'm having trouble getting over myself, or from outside forces, right? So we always enlist. And that was his prayer. But what is he saying? We take from this Gemara that there are two impediments to freedom. Because freedom, we just learned, is to be able to follow the dictates of one's heart, of one's soul, of what somebody knows to be correct. So he's defining for us what stops us, what are the impediments? Two things. Sorsha beitza, the Yetzer Hara, Shabanu, the inclination, and the outside forces of subjugation to the kingdom. What is subjugation to the kingdom? So I once heard a beautiful talk by Yaakov Weinberg of blessed memory, a great thinker, Rosh Hashiva of the yeshiva near Yisrael in Baltimore. So he said, we normally think of subjugation to the kingdom, we go back to Nazi Germany. We go back to Stalin's Russia, or even after that, subjugation to the kingdom. It pops in my mind. There's a famous story Rabbi Krohn tells about this woman couldn't give her child a bris. She finally gave a child a bris, so she kissed the child afterwards, right? After 8 months. She kissed the child, she passed out. And they said, oi, 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 oi. Why'd she pass out? She passed out because to give a child a bris at 8 months, oh, that hurts. To give a child a bris at 8 days, it literally heals like within 24 hours, 36 hours, 40 hours, it's done. No big deal. All right. 8 months, that's something. That's something. So they thought that because she had to give a bris at 8 months, she passed out. So they revive her. Said, lady, what's wrong? She says, from the time this child was 8 days, I swore that I would not kiss him until he got a bris. I was going to make sure that my child would have a bris, and I would do everything. And I desperately wanted to kiss my child. So I swore that I would not kiss him until he got the bris. You hear that? You hear that? That's Shibud Malchios. They wouldn't allow a bris. They had to hide it, right? That's subjugation to the kingdom. And that's a free lady under such subjugation. So these are the two impediments. These are the two impediments for freedom. Okay. I always give this example, another example of freedom. I love this example of freedom. It shows how a person could be free or how people could be free, even though they're such terribly enslaved. We mentioned before about celebrating Pesach under such difficult times. So there's a very famous prayer that was written in the concentration camp of Bergen-Belsen to be used the night of the Seder when there was not going to be a Seder because they didn't have anything to make a Seder with, or not going to be a Seder as we know it, that's for sure. There's not going to be a Seder like we know it. And the rabbis of Bergen-Belsen, they drew up a prayer. And the prayer was to be said before eating chametz the night of Pesach, because that's what they had to do, because they needed to keep alive. So instead of having a Yehi Ratzon, a prefatory prayer to eating matzah, they wrote a prefatory prayer for eating chametz. And this is the way it goes. And you'll see that it's a takeoff on Rav Alexandroi's prayer. You remember Rav Alexandroi, what did he start off? He said, Father in heaven, you know that it's my will to do your will. But what can I do? The Yetzer Hara stops me. And subjugation to the kingdom stops me. So they used his prayer as the model for this prayer of eating chametz on the night of Pesach and Bergen-Belsen. This is the way it goes. Father in heaven, it is revealed and known to you that it is our will to do your will. It is our will to celebrate Pesach by eating matzah and heeding the prohibition of chametz. However, concerning this, our heart aches. The subjugation prevents us. We find ourselves in mortal danger. We are prepared and ready to fulfill your commandment of not eating matzah, but you shall live by them and not die by them. So the mitzvah that Pesach night was to eat chametz and to heed the warning of guard yourself and greatly watch your soul. Therefore, our prayer to you is to give us life, God. Sustain us, redeem us speedily, so that we will be able to observe your laws and do your will and serve you with a complete heart. Amen. These people were physically enslaved. These people were spiritually free, totally free. And therefore, they're eating chametz at their Seder in Bergen-Belsen was an expression of their freedom because they were true to the dictates of their soul, and that was the mitzvah that they had to do on that night. How many people, doctor tells them, you have to do this, you do that. You say, but I can't because of this halacha. They can't bring themselves to do it, right? How many times have I had an issue with people, right, that refused to eat on Yom Kippur when they had to eat on Yom Kippur, when they had to eat on Yom Kippur, and they refused. I remember one fellow, he needed to take his medications, and I begged him and I pleaded with him and I told him how to do it. Everyone should consult with their rabbi how to do it. There are ways of taking medication, when you have to take a medication, but I begged and pleaded, no, 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 no. Well, sure enough, Motzei Yom Kippur, I get a call. He's in the hospital, and he was very sick because he didn't take his medication. I mean, this guy took a list of medication like unbelievable. He needed some medication. He really needed. The Ratzon Hashem, the will of Hashem, true freedom is not to say, I can't do that because I can't do that. True freedom is to say, what does God want from me now? What's. So, my friends, that's an example of true freedom. So we just changed the model completely. Celebration of Pesach is freedom from spiritual subjugation. That being the case, we can understand very clearly what it means when it says in the Haggadah, B'chol dar v'dar, in every generation, chayiv adam liros es atzmo ilu hu yatsa mitzrayim. In every generation, a person should see himself like he left Egypt. So I was just learning with a very scholarly person last week. And you know what he said to me? He said to me, come on, like, what does that mean? Like, stop it already. We're on, he says to me, Chaim, we're in our 50s and 60s. Like, he's in his 50s. Hey, the 50s, like, come on. Like, who are we kidding with that? Like, if you went to Mitzrayim, yeah, go ahead, put the matzah on your shoulder, go to the door, and like you see yourself, like role playing, like if you come out of Mitzrayim. What does that mean? So I'll tell you what it means. What it means is that we have the ability to be Yotzei Mitzrayim, to achieve freedom, to have an exodus, just as the people who came out of Mitzrayim. Because the essential celebration is spiritual. So don't we have a monkey on our shoulder? We can't do what we're supposed to do because of those two impediments that we just discussed. We have that problem. So if on this night we can achieve some measure more of freedom, so it's Kihilu Hu Yatzami Mitzrayim. So I have arrived. I have developed. I am a freer individual. If the celebration was about a physical celebration, so okay, well, I came out of Mitzrayim, but that's only a postscript. Essential celebration, spiritual. Listen to the way Rav Shlomo Wolbe, one of the great ethical masters of the last generation, this is the way he said it. He quotes Reb Chaim Volozhin, the great student of the Vilna Gaon. Reb Chaim Volozhin taught that the word Haggadah itself, means the hidden part of the matter. The hidden part. What's hidden?
Oh.
The Haggadah reveals to us inner progression of things. With this knowledge, we sit on the Seder night to say Haggadah in order to attain the inner progression of the Exodus. There's an outer facade of the Exodus. We physically came out of Mitzrayim, but there's an inner progression. The Haggadah says, originally, our fathers were idolaters, and now God drew us to his service. Mitchila ovdei avodah zarah hayavosenu. Originally, our forefathers were idolaters. Va'achshav kirvanu hamakom la'avodaso. And now God has taken us, or God is taking us to his service. Says Rabbi Wolbe so beautifully. You sit there at the Seder and you say these words. Originally we were idolaters, and now God has taken us. What does that mean? One might ask, is God drawing us to his service now? Didn't it happen 3,000 years ago? Here, the Haggadah hints to us the quote, hidden matter. Indeed, now, at this very moment, on Seder night, God takes each of us by the hand and he draws us close to his service. It's a contemporary event. It's not a historical event. And as we're going to learn very soon, it's through the viewing of the historical event that we have a contemporary event. We have a contemporary transformation. That's you and that's me. We have a transformation. The hidden matter is that the holiday isn't simply a commemoration of distant past. Rather, each year, the light that inspired our forefathers in Mitzrayim is renewed for us. If we merit it, we will actually leave Mitzrayim. So at the Seder, we tap into and develop the freedom which was attained at the Exodus. There are 15 steps to the Seder. And again, what are we trying to do? We're trying to develop an integrated approach, how each step fits. Okay? What's 15? 15 is not random, my friends. There were 15 steps in the Beis Hamikdash leading from what was called the Ezras Nashim, the outer courtyard, to the Ezras Yisrael, to the inner courtyard. On those 15 steps, the Leviim, the Levites, they stood on the Sukkot holiday and they sang the Shir Hamalos. Shir Hamalos, songs of ascent. Ascent, get it? Songs of ascent, Shir Hamalos. Psalms 120 to 134, 15 songs of ascent, which were sung by the Leviim on those 15 steps, which ascends to a higher part, physically and spiritually, higher part of the temple. They sung those psalms of ascent, those songs of ascent, during the Simchas Beis HaShoeva, during the parties on Sukkot, nights of Sukkot, at which people achieved dizzying levels of spirituality. Dizzying levels of spirituality. The Gemara says, Misham sho'avu roach hakodesh. From those parties, they drew divine inspiration. The ultimate for us here in this world, the ultimate connection with God, with the Ribono Shel Olam. And therefore, when our sages who set in order, Seder means order, who set in order the Seder, they picked the number 15. They gave us a formula by which we access the spiritual force of the Exodus, a Seder, an order of activities, each one a significant step in unleashing the freedom within us. I love that line. Let's say it again. They gave us a Seder, an order of 15 activities, each one a significant step in unleashing the freedom within us, thereby bringing the individual and humanity to its ultimate purpose. What's at stake at the night of Seder with these 15 steps is nothing less than redemption. We're going to get to that a little more. So that's why it's 15 steps. So my friends, we have now completed the introduction. Now let's begin. What's
Also,
the first step?
Yud K, Yud Kuf is also 15.
Oh, the Shem Hashem. Very good. First step, Kadesh. Kadesh, you say, what's the big deal? You make Kiddush. You always make Kiddush. You make Kiddush on Friday night. You make Kiddush on Shabbos. What's the big deal? No, 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 no. No, this is a very different Kiddush. I'll prove to you it's a very different Kiddush. When you make Kiddush Friday night, how many people have a Kiddush cup in front of you? How many people have a Kiddush cup on the table? One. Most people, it's one, right, Larry? You're muted.
Yes. Well, I have one, Sarah has one, but there's one on the table.
Okay, so that's nice, but you don't have to do that. You can have one. One Kiddush cup. Most people have one Kiddush cup. And I got news for you. Most people drink from the wine, but you don't have to drink. One person needs to drink. One person. A listener fulfills his or her obligation with Kiddush by being there for Kiddush, hearing the Kiddush, and have one person drink the wine. My friends, that doesn't work for the Kiddush of the night of Pesach. Why? Because Kiddush is also the first of the four cups. And every man and woman needs to drink from the four cups. So each person needs to have a cup, and each person needs to drink. This is not a regular Kiddush. This is the first of the four cups. The great sage, Meshech Chachma, who goes through the meaning of each of the cups. And we're going to do, in this series, we're going to do at least a few of his interpretations about the cups. But he starts us off here in such a beautiful way. Meshech Chachma, that's Meir Simcha of Devinsk, he says that Kiddush, the night of Pesach, is a celebration of the sanctity of our people. In Mitzrayim, although, this is an important idea. This is good, it's a good one for your Seder. In Mitzrayim, although we were subjugated physically, totally subjugated physically, but we didn't mix physically. In other words, there was almost no recorded case of a Egyptian man living with a Jewish woman and vice versa. Normally, it doesn't happen that way. Slave owner normally makes use of his subjects in every sort of way. The way I like to say it, just I don't have to say too much, is Thomas Jefferson had black children. Now, how did Thomas Jefferson have black children? Very simple. He had black slaves. So what happens? Okay. Not to knock Thomas Jefferson. Okay. I'm not one of those. Founding fathers, they were amazing people. Okay. But let's not go there now. But the point is, normally you lord over their bodies, so you make use of their bodies. Not here. There is a recorded case of something like that happening. And we have this idea, it's a very important idea in Judaism, kol makom, she'ata motze geder erva, sham ata motze kedusha. Wherever you have circumscription, whenever you have a fence around illicit sexual behavior, that's where you find sanctity. That's holiness. When a person or a people rein themselves in, rein their desires in, they hold themselves back, there you find Kedusha. This self-restraint, by the way, I'm getting a little off topic, but you know where the Jewish people got their power to do this from? The matriarch Sarah. The matriarch Sarah. Remember, she was taken by a pharaoh too. She was the historic pre-enactment. Her being taken by a pharaoh was the historic pre-enactment of the Jewish people in Mitzrayim. And she stopped him. God helped. But she stopped. She would have nothing to do with him. And therefore her progeny, same thing. There's a beautiful medrash that says it was Sarah, and then it was years later Yosef, again in Mitzrayim. Look how beautiful this is. You can say it, you say it by Kiddush. Yosef also. The women of Mitzrayim threw themselves at Yosef because Yosef was the most beautiful guy that ever lived, most handsome guy that ever lived, and he was one of the most powerful people in Mitzrayim. You know what happens to such people, right? Let's be honest. Let's be open as much as it's okay, right? And yet he controlled himself. Says the Medrash, it was Sarah Imenu and Yosef HaTzadik. They implanted that restraint within the Jewish people and gave them the power in Mitzrayim to be circumscribed, to be Gadur Ba'arayos. My friends, that's the beginning of sanctity. Kedusha, sanctity. But there's an ultimate sanctity too. The highest level that a person achieves by their own efforts of self-development, of self-actualization in this world is called by our sages, you got it, Kedusha, sanctity. So there's basic sanctity, and then there's level when a person achieves, he climbs the ladder of spiritual perfection. The ultimate is sanctity. Many of you will be familiar with this next quote from the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. Pinchas ben Yair, a brisa of Pinchas ben Yair, who talks about how a person develops spiritually, and this is what it says. And I can't give a full explanation of this now. You know why? Because Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto wrote a whole book explaining this brisa, a whole book. That's called the Mesilas Yesharim. You're familiar with it. Path of the Just, which is explaining this brisa. But let me give you in his introduction, he quotes this and said, this is my book. Listen to what he says. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair said, Torah leads to watchfulness. Watchfulness leads to alacrity. Alacrity means to cleanliness. Cleanliness leads to separation. Separation leads to purity. Purity leads to saintliness. Saintliness leads to humility. Humility leads to fear of sin. Fear of sin leads to holiness. And that's the end. It says holiness leads to divine inspiration. Holiness, Kedusha, is the top. And then holiness leads to divine inspiration. Divine inspiration is a gift. That's not our effort. God gives it to us once we achieve. So the highest level of spiritual attainment is Kedusha, is sanctity. And you know what sanctity is? To make a long story short, sanctity is the ultimate freedom. Sanctity is that my proclivities, my desires, whether they be from influence from outside or inside, or don't affect me at all. I'm in total control. Not only that, I use all physical desires in the service of HaKadosh Baruch. Mesilas Yesharim, the Mesilas Yesharim says so beautifully. He says an earlier level is where the righteous person is shoes. He leaves aside any physical involvement. But the highest level for the Jew is not to eschew physical involvement, but to take the physical involvement and to use it in the service of God. That means eating. That means drinking. That means procreating. Service of God. But I often say, Rabbi Beryl Wine of Blessed Memory would say that the religions of the world, listen to this, the religions of the world eat to live. That's spirituality, not the Jew. The Jew lives to eat. And he wasn't being funny. Not being funny, not being facetious. It's true. That's what this is saying. That Kedusha is to take the mundane, to take the physical, right? The Kohen eats karbanos. And that's service of God. And so when we eat on Shabbos, we eat on a Yom Tif. Imagine this, we're about to get to this, right? Next class. In the middle of the Seder. We're going to the highest levels of sanctity. We sit down and we have a 3-course meal. Are you kidding? I always joke during the Seder. Oh, come on. We had matzah more. Let's just skip the meal. Stop it. Let's go on. Like you have room for eat something now. Nobody likes my joke. I don't know. My kids never like my joke. But anyway, the truth is it's only a joke. Because a major, as we're going to learn, a significant part of the Seder is to have that meal. Because you have to eat right. For the right purpose. In the service of God. So that's Kedusha. So, my friends, the first step, I like to call the first step of the Seder, is setting the bar. We're about to achieve freedom. We're about to self-develop to the highest levels. So, like the pole vaulter at the Olympics, you don't set the bar here. You've been training in this for a long time. This is a big day. You're at the you set it at the highest levels. So the first thing we do is we make kiddush. And I'll tell you, I was so excited. Last year, I came across a quote of the Vilna Gaon, who says what we just discussed in the last 20 minutes. I believe he says in 3 words. He says like this: Kos Rishon, the first cup, hu kiddush. Okay. Neged olam hazeh, that corresponds to this world. Shetzarech lehiskadesh atzmo ba'olam hazeh. The whole point of the kiddush, first cup. A person needs to sanctify himself in this world. That's what it is. That's kiddush. We set the bar very high. We are going to actualize ourselves. We are going to achieve freedom, total freedom, which is total freedom is you take the physical, all my desires, whatever it might be, and you turn it around and use that in the service of God. You use it following the dictates of your deepest desire. That's Kaddish. Okay, let's move on. Urachatz. The next step is we wash our hands. So you say, okay, you always wash your hands right after Kiddush. But slow down. You're not washing for bread now. You're not washing for matzah now. You're washing for karpas. So what's up with this? Why on earth are you washing for karpas? Well, you say there's a halakha that if you eat a wet fruit or a wet vegetable, you have to wash your hands. Not a lot of people know that. And the truth is, it's not really our custom. Okay? But it's a discussion in halacha, whether you have to wash your hands when you eat a wet fruit. But over here, you certainly do not. Why? Because you're eating just a little bit. Did you know that? You're eating just a little bit of karpas. You're not eating a lot of karpas. You have to eat less than an olive size of karpas. Oh, people are so hungry they want to eat. But no, you're not supposed to. I'm discussing at the later class at 5:45. I'll discuss why. Okay, we're not getting into halacha here. Right? But you're not supposed to, you're supposed to a little bit. You take a little bit of celery, a little bit of banana, a little bit of whatever it is you're making a hadam on, a little bit. So when you dip something a little bit, you don't even have to wash, and for sure you don't have to wash. So ma pitom, what are you doing? My friends, I'll tell you what you're doing. You know, we speak about washing your hands. I ask you, think about Judaism. Who was always washing his hands?
Mhm.
Cohen. Cohen was always washing his hands. Not because he's neurotic, because the Torah says you got to wash your hands. Between this service and that, he was always washing his hands. Similarly, you wake up in the morning, you wash your hands. There are 3 reasons why you wash your hands. One of them nobody knows. Most people think because there's a spirit that's on your hands, and that the Zohar does say, that's really the third reason. But the Rishonim, the medieval commentaries, early medieval commentaries, they see 2 other reasons. One of them is because your hands are just dirty, because at night you're scratching and you're right. There's another reason. The reason is because in the morning you are waking up for the service of your Creator. And you are part of a priesthood. Yeah. You and I, we are part of Mamlechas Kohanim V'Rei Kadosh. We are part of a nation, a kingdom of Kohanim, of priests. That's what the Torah calls us. That's what God told us right before He gave us the Torah in Parshas Yisro, in the book of Exodus, the Parsha of Jethro. That's what He calls us, a kingdom of priests. And you ready for this? And a goy kadosh and a kadosh. and a holy race, a holy nation. So we wake up in the morning, we wash our hands. Now, why is the Kohen washing his hands? Why are we as Kohanim washing our hands? So listen to a beautiful idea that Rav Shamshofel Hirsch says and others say about washing hands. They ask the question, what is this netilas yadayim? You ever hear of netilas yadayim? We call washing hands netilas yadayim. That's very strange because the word netila in Hebrew means to take. To take. See, taking your hands. The word for washing in Hebrew is rechitzas yadayim, is washing hands. We don't call it washing hands. If you would say to someone, "Oh, you rochetzas yadayim," you put your hands in the sink. You don't use a cup. Netilas yadayim is a special thing, Or I know some of you like Yiddish is negelvasser, right? But we call it in Hebrew it's netilas yadayim. So what does it mean? Says Rav Shafal Hirsch. Netila is not a Hebrew word, it's an Aramaic word. And you know what? It's an Aramaic word for the Hebrew word nisiyah, elevation. When we wash our hands, the Kohen washes his hands. And one of the three reasons why we wash our hands in the morning is to elevate our hands. Let's say it this way, to dedicate our hands. We woke up in the morning and we're Kohanim. We dedicate our hands to the service of God. Hands, the symbol of activity, our hands. We dedicate our hands. We dedicate our action service of God. The Kohen, he goes from one service to the next. He washes his hands. He's dedicating for the service of God. He's not doing something willy-nilly. He's not daydreaming. He's not on his surfing the internet. No, I'm dedicated to the service of God. Oh, my friends. So here we are. We just said, it's a custom before the Seder starts to go through the 15 steps. Kadesh, Orchatz, Karpas, Yachatz, Magid. 15 steps. And then we just did Kadesh. We set the bar very high. We said, we're going to achieve Kedusha tonight. Self-actualization. We're going to develop. Wow, very high. We're going to go to the highest level. What's the first thing we do? Wash our hands. We dedicate our activity to that service. And therefore, listen to this. You'll love it. And if you got a pen in your hand, get it down. That's why I believe, and others say similar. That's why I believe it's the only step which is connected with an end. Kadesh, Urachatz, Karpas, Yachas, Magid, Rochsa, Motzi, Matzah. There's no connection between, let's say, Karpas and Yachatz. It doesn't say Karpas, Urachatz, and. It doesn't say. The only place where it says and is between the first two. Kadesh, Urchatz. Make Kiddush and wash your hands. Why here? The answer is because most people are going to think that why do you wash your hands? You wash your hands for the third step. But you don't wash your hands for the third step. You wash your hands for the first step. Washing hands is the second step. Why are we washing our hands? Because we just said that we're going to sanctify ourselves. We are going way high up tonight. Oh, I better wash my hands. So, which dedicates them to the service. So therefore, the washing of the hands is connected to the previous step, not to the next step. There's nothing to do. It's not about the vegetable that we're about to eat. It's about the declaration that we are going to be get very holy tonight. I want to take it one more step and then we'll break. We'll break for the week. Okay? And those that have been here before know that this is from my favorite. Then we go to Karpas. Karpas, I think, is the second most underrated step of the Seder. Second most underrated step. The Karpas, what do? You take a little bit. In my house, it's a celery. My parents' house used to be a piece of potato. You take a lot of something, and you eat a little bit. You make a brei pri adama, and you have in mind the moror, and next case, right? Takes all of 3 seconds. What is it? What is it? So there was a commentary on the Rambam, was by the name of Rabbeinu Manoach, an early source. And he says something so fantastic. And once you learn it, you can't think about anything else. Literally. He says, Zecher Liksonas Pasim. This is a commemoration for the coat of many colors. Coat of many colors? Yeah, the coat of many colors that Jacob gave to Joseph. Yaakov gave to Yosef. What on earth does that have to do with the price in tea in China? Answer is everything. Rabbeinu Manoach goes on, Shebiglola. It because of that coat of many colors and what it represented, the favoritism that Yaakov gave to Yosef, and therefore the brothers hated Yosef, and Yosef was taken, and he was sold down to Egypt. And ultimately, what happened? The brothers went down to Egypt to find him, and ultimately the whole family went down to Egypt, and that's how we got into Egypt in the first place. So now if somebody would ask you, ooh, let's say somebody just got off the boat. They're at a Seder table for the first time. They say to you, we're celebrating the Exodus. How do we get into that mess to begin with?
Yeah.
You know what the answer is? The answer you tell them, Karpas. Karpas! It's because of the Xonis Passim. It's because of the hatred of the brothers. That's how the whole mess started. Oh my gosh. You think that mess has been cleaned up yet? It hasn't. Second temple was destroyed. Second temple was destroyed because of hatred of brothers. Who implanted the hatred of the brothers in our people? The ultimate brothers. The ultimate brothers. The 12 tribes. They didn't get along. We still suffer from this. We haven't exorcised this problem from our midst. So the first thing we do in Pesach Seder, after setting the bar, where we're going, where we're headed, and after dedicating ourselves with our hands, in the words of Rabbi Isaac Bernstein, who I first heard this idea from, he said, Act 1, Scene 1. Forget about about leaving Mitzrayim. We're going to talk the rest of the night about how we leaving Mitzrayim, but we better darn talk about how we came down to Mitzrayim. If we're going to get anything out of this night, we got to commit ourselves to getting over that issue. You ask, what is Xonis Pasim, coat of many colors, have to do with Karpas? And again, I'll tell you everything. Because if you will look at the Megillah Esther, I'm sorry. If you will look at the pasuk, the verse that talks about Joseph's coat of many colors, Xonis Pasim, then you will find a Rashi. I think it's the beginning of Parshat Vayeshev. You will find a Rashi. And Rashi, right, the king of all biblical commentators, he scratches his head for all of us to see. And he says, ooh, what is that word, pasim? Where does that come from? And then he did a computer search in his mind, Rashi did. He said, oh, I got it. I know what it is. You find that word similar in the Megillah Esther, the book of Esther that we just read. Really? Where is it? Well, in the beginning of the story, it talks about the setup of Achashverosh's party. There's a whole elaborate detail of Achashverosh's party. And part of it is that he had these woolen drapings. Sometimes, you can go in, you can have these people, these party planners, these party people, they can go into a gym and they can dress that thing up with drapings. It's unbelievable. You can make it look like a wedding hall. They do it. It's unbelievable. I'm sure you've seen it. So that's what he did. And part of these drapings, it says, we know it when you'll hear it, you know it. Chur karpas usecheles. One of those drapings, it's wool. Karpas. The word karpas. So Rashi, over in Parshas Vayeshev, when he's trying to define pasim, he says pasim is cognate, is linguistically related to the word karpas. Now it's unbelievable. Says Rabbeinu Anoach, when our sages wanted to do something, and of course it had to be something with eating, that was going to remind us of the Xonis Pasim, They took a vegetable called karpas. They said, eat karpas. That's going to remind us of the Ksonis pasim, because that's what Rashi says. The karpas is pasim. So we eat a karpas. There are actually those that say that the word karpas means celery. Actually means celery. Now, the truth is, you don't have to eat celery. Anything brei priadama, preferably it should be something green. If your family custom is a potato, use a potato. It's fine. That's fine. But there are those that actually say the word karpas means celery. So they took a vegetable which is going to remind us of the Ksonis Pasim, Act 1, Scene 1. Okay, we're going over time. I really thank you for
Thank you, Rabbi.
joining.
Thank you,
I
Rabbi.
hope we'll get together again next week. If anyone will try to send out a recording of this, or if you want a recording and we don't send it out, but God willing, next week we'll start with the most underrated step of the Seder, and that's yachatz. Yachatz, you break the middle matzah, right? Take the small one, you leave it there, you take the big one, put it away. Done, let's move on. No, 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 no. It's huge. Yachatz is huge. But I don't want to give it away anymore. Anyway, thanks so much for joining. I think we'll also have Zoom if you want. We're going to do the halachic part of the Seder at 5:45. I think it's 5:45. We're going to do the halachic part of the Seder. If anyone, it's going to be much drier. So anyone wants to join, you are most welcome. Otherwise, thanks for joining. Great to see you.
Thank
Have
you,
a great
Rabbi.
rest of the
Thank
day
you,
and
Rabbi.
keep on enjoying those preparations.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone. Good night. Good
care.
afternoon. No, I don't.
What's this?
It's hard